You know this feeling. It arrives before the calendar tells you it should. It's in the chill that lingers after the sun has set, in the way the shadows seem to stretch and deepen at the edges of your vision. It's a primal hum beneath the noise of the modern world, a sense of anticipation that feels both thrilling and deeply unsettling. We call it Halloween. We dress it up in cheap costumes and trade candy in its name, but we are celebrating something we no longer understand. For our ancestors, this was not a party. It was the most dangerous time of the year, a seam in the fabric of reality where the barrier between the living and the dead dissolves into mist. Join us on a journey into that forgotten terror. We will pull back the veil of the modern holiday to confront the powerful, awe-inspiring, and often horrifying beliefs it was built upon. We will stand at the sacrificial fires of Celtic Samhain, listen for the death cart of the Breton Ankou, and bargain with the spirit gatekeeper of Haitian Vodou. We will uncover the watchful eyes of the Djinn and face the insatiable hunger of the Viking walking dead. What ancient truths are hiding just beneath the mask of our favourite holiday? The answer will change the way you see Halloween forever. Today, for Halloween, the mask is a game, a flimsy shield of plastic and paint, worn for a night of manufactured fright. But in the old time, in the season of the world's dying, the mask was not a game. It was a prayer whispered in wood and animal hide, an act of mortal desperation. Our journey begins where Halloween itself was born, in the damp green hollows of ancient Ireland and Scotland, at a festival that marked the year's final shuddering breath. It was called Samhain, and at Samhain, the masks were for survival. The Celts believed that on this one night, the border between our world and the other world dissolved into mist. This was no cause for celebration. It was a reason for a deep and profound terror. For when the gates were down, anything could cross. Not just the quiet shades of ancestors, but things far older, far hungrier. They were the Sluagh, the restless and malevolent dead. In some tellings, they are the souls of unforgiven sinners, so wicked that both heaven and hell have cast them out, leaving them to roam the earth in a state of perpetual hunger. They are a phenomenon, a dark weather system of souls. They fly in from the west, in great dark flocks like starlings, a cloud of spirits seeking to steal the souls of the dying. To hear their chattering, gibbering whispers on the wind was a death sentence. It was said they would swarm a house, pressing against the windows, trying to find a way in to carry off the spirit of one lingering on the threshold of death. Families would keep the west-facing windows of a sick room tightly shut, no matter how stifling the air, for fear of letting the host in. To be caught out after dark, to be seen for what you were, a healthy, living soul, was to risk being snatched away, swept into a darkness from which no one returned. Some tales say they would lift a person into the air and riddle their body with invisible elf shot, leaving them to die later of a mysterious wasting sickness. And so, the people became monsters to fool the monsters. They donned grotesque faces carved from wood or gourds and wrapped themselves in animal skins, not to amuse, but to deceive the things that hunted in the gloom, and to pray that they might be passed over. Today, for Halloween, we light our quaint fires. We carve grinning, idiotic faces into pumpkins and place a candle inside, setting them on our porches as cheerful, welcoming beacons. But at Samhain, fire was a far more solemn and terrible instrument. As the festival drew near, a great darkness was ritually invited in. Every hearth in every home, the very heart of family and life, was deliberately extinguished. It was a symbolic death, a communal surrender to the cold, an acknowledgement of the sun's failing power and the world's descent into its darkest half. The people would then gather on a sacred hilltop where the druid priests would kindle a single, sacred bonfire, not with a simple spark, but often by turning a great wheel against a wooden axle, the need fire, a desperate piece of sympathetic magic to churn life back into the dying sun. And into this fire, they made offerings. The bones of cattle slaughtered for the winter were cast into the inferno, giving the blaze its older, more honest name, the bone fire. From this one great conflagration of bone and prayer, each family would carry an ember home in a hollowed-out turnip, the original jack-o'-lantern, to relight their own cold hearth. It was not decoration. It was a fragile shield of borrowed solar fire, a cleansing ritual to burn away all harmful influences before the long, devouring night. Today, our Halloween feasts are an exercise in excess, a mountain of sugar and noise. But the central feast of Samhain was an affair of profound and unnerving stillness. It was the dumb supper. Families gathered for a meal, eaten in absolute, unbroken silence, a quiet sign of respect and invitation, for they were not dining alone. An extra place was set, a chair left empty, a plate filled with the choicest food. This was for the ancestors, the family dead, who returned on this night to the homes they once knew. Doors and windows were left ajar to grant them passage. The living ate, acutely aware of the unseen presences in the room, the silent, honoured guests. It was a formal, terrifying communion, for one never knew what other, less welcome spirits might follow the beloved dead through the open door. Special soul cakes, or barmbrack in Ireland, might be left out on the doorstep for these wandering souls, a necessary appeasement, for if the offering was withheld, misfortune would surely follow. This ancient offering may be the true dark root of our modern trick-or-treating. Divination was also central to the night's rituals. Nuts were roasted on the hearth to predict a couple's future. If they roasted quietly, a happy union was foretold. But if they hissed and jumped, a quarrelsome life awaited. Young women might peel an apple in one continuous strip, throw it over their shoulder, and believe the shape it formed on the floor was the initial of their future husband. Or they might gaze into a mirror by candlelight, hoping to see his face, but always running the risk of seeing a skull instead, a sign they would die before they married. We think of Halloween as a choice, a party we can attend or ignore. But the ancient texts describe Samhain as a mandatory 3-day and 3-night assembly. All were required by law and custom to present themselves to their local kings. To refuse was not a social slight. It was an insult to the gods, and the punishment was not ostracism, but death, delivered by divine hands. This was a holiday of obligation and fear, a period of intense, ritualized order, a desperate attempt to impose human law onto a time of spiritual chaos. And that chaos had names. It had forms. There was the puka, a devious shapeshifter who could appear as a black horse with burning yellow eyes, offering terrifying night rides to lonely travellers. In some parts of Ireland, it was a giant hairy bogeyman. In others, an enormous eagle, It was a creature of dual nature, sometimes helping farmers by secretly milling their corn, but more often trampling crops and causing cattle to stampede in terror. Then there was the Lady Gwyn, a headless woman in white, who in Wales was known as Wai Ladi Wen. She would stalk the night, often accompanied by a monstrous black sow, the Hoch du Gutar, a fearsome omen that would chase people home from the dying bonfires, and most feared of all, the Dullahan, a headless rider on a black steed, sometimes driving a death coach, the Coiste Bodhar, made of human bones, with skulls for lanterns and a human spine for a whip. He carries his own rotting head under his arm, the flesh with the colour and consistency of mouldy cheese, a hideous grin splitting the face from ear to ear. The eyes, small and black, dart about like malevolent flies, seeing all, even on the darkest night. He is the embodiment of the ancient god Crom Dubh, a deity who once demanded human sacrifice by decapitation and who, after the old ways faded, took to the roads to claim the lives he was denied. To hear him call your name was to have your soul ripped from your body. To merely look upon him was to be struck blind in one eye. The only protection was gold, a metal the Dullahan is said to fear with an irrational terror. Even a single gold pin was enough to make him vanish. These were not characters in a story. In the minds of the people, they were tangible threats, roaming the darkened landscape just beyond the firelight, waiting. The modern holiday has forgotten this. It has forgotten that the darkness was not empty. In the intricate tapestry of Celtic belief, the fear of death is a thread woven in 1,000 different patterns. But in one corner of that world, on the windswept granite-boned peninsula of Brittany in northwestern France, those threads are gathered and knotted into a single, chilling figure. A being that is not merely a relic of a dead past, but a shadow that still lingers in the Breton imagination. It has a name that catches in the throat: the Ankou. The Ankou is the personification of death itself, or, in a detail that is somehow more dreadful, he is death's servant, his collector. His work is simple. He gathers the souls of the dying. The true horror of the Ankou begins not with a sight, but with a sound. Imagine a lonely country lane, late at night, the world wrapped in a damp, silent fog. And then you hear it, the slow, grinding squeal of an axle that needs grease, the heavy rhythmic clatter of wooden wheels on stone. It is the sound of the car and Ankou, the death cart. For the people of Brittany, this is no ordinary sound. It is a personal and profound omen. To hear the cart of the Ankou means that death is near. It means that a soul will be collected from your house or from a neighbour's. The sound itself is a sentence, the audible approach of the inevitable, a slow, scraping dread that turns the familiar night into a waiting room for the end. Sometimes, the cart is preceded by another sound, the blood-curdling nocturnal cry of the barn owl, the lapus and Ankou, the bird of death, his dreadful assistant. The cart itself is pulled by 2 horses, one fat and healthy, the other emaciated and skeletal, a grim pairing of the living and the dead. But who is this figure driving the cart? In the oldest sculptures, found in the ossuaries and churches of Lower Brittany, he is a skeleton, yes. But he does not always carry the scythe we have come to expect. Sometimes he holds a lance or a barbed javelin. Sometimes a simple spade for digging the graves of those he is about to collect. The true terror of the Ankou is not in the tool he carries, but in the face he hides. For the Ankou is not some eternal, otherworldly entity. The Ankou is human, or rather, he was. This is the secret that lies at the heart of the legend, the detail that transforms it from myth into a masterpiece of psychological horror. In the folklore of Brittany, each parish has its own Ankou, and that Ankou is the last person to have died in the parish during the previous year. He is not a stranger. He is your neighbour. He is the old man from the end of the lane, the young woman taken by fever. For 1 full year, that soul is bound to the terrible task of collecting the dead of his own community. He is often depicted as a tall, skeletal figure, his face lost in the shadow of a wide-brimmed hat, his form draped in a long black coat, just as the local men would wear. In some tales, his skull spins atop his shoulders like a top, allowing him to see in all directions at once. To meet him is to know your end is near, but it is said that if you see him and he does not see you, you have a year of life left. If he looks at you, your time is measured in days. And the fate of the community for the entire year hangs on the character of the person who has become the Ankou. If the last to die was known in life to be cruel, it is believed he will be a voracious Ankou, seeking many souls to fill his cart. If the Ankou is young, the young have reason to fear. The community is held hostage by the personality of its most recent dead. And the Ankou does not work alone. His assistant, the one who walks beside the cart and loads the souls of the newly dead, is the second to last person to have died in the parish. Imagine the procession, your own recently deceased neighbours coming for you in the night. This is not a horror of the unknown, but of the horribly, intimately known. It is the fear of the familiar made monstrous, the uncanny dread that the ones who are supposed to be at rest are not, and that they have come back, not as loving ancestors, but as the cold, silent functionaries of death itself. One story tells of 3 drunken friends who encounter the Ankou on a dark road. 2 of them mock him and throw stones, breaking his cart's axle. The third, taking pity, helps the Ankou repair the cart with a branch and his own shoelaces. The next morning, the 2 mockers are found dead. The helpful friend is spared, but his hair has turned snow white overnight, and he never speaks of the encounter again. Not all doors open with the turning of the season. Some are permanent fixtures in the architecture of the world, cracks in reality, places of passage. And the most potent of these, the most charged with consequence, is the Crossroads. From the rituals of ancient Greece to the Anglo-Saxon practice of burying suicides at the meeting of 2 paths to confuse their spirits, these places have always been seen as locations where the mundane world touches the supernatural. It is a place between the worlds. In the spiritual traditions of the Congo in Central Africa, the Crossroads is a sacred symbol, the point of communication between the living and the ancestors. And when these beliefs were carried across the Atlantic in the hearts of enslaved peoples, they took root in the humid soil of Haiti and New Orleans. And there, at the Crossroads, they placed a guardian. In Haitian Vodou and its diasporic cousins, he is known as Papa Legba. He is one of the Sluagh, the spirits who serve as intermediaries between humanity and the divine. But Legba's role is unique and absolutely essential. He stands at the spiritual crossroads. He holds the keys to the gate between the human world and the world of the spirits. Without his permission, no communication can take place. No prayer can be heard. No other Sluagh can be summoned. Every single ceremony, no matter its purpose, must begin and end with him. Practitioners make offerings, sweet candies, strong coffee, dark rum and pipe tobacco, and sing the chant, Papa Legba, ouvre bay pour moen. Papa Legba, Open the gate for me. Only then will the door swing open. Today, we tell cheap stories of deals with the devil at the crossroads, a trope born of a misunderstanding of these very beliefs. But the true nature of the crossroads spirit is infinitely more complex and far more unsettling. Papa Legba does not appear as a terrifying demon. He manifests as a frail old man in tattered clothes, leaning on a crutch, a wide-brimmed straw hat on his head, a small dog at his feet. He seems harmless, a gentle, grandfatherly figure. But this frailty is a profound illusion. He is immensely powerful. He limps, it is said, because he is walking in two worlds at once, with one foot in the material realm and the other in the unseen. And the cane he leans on is no mere walking stick. It is the Poto Mitan, the cosmic central pole, the gateway between heaven and earth itself. But here, at the heart of this sacred transaction, lies a deeply unsettling paradox. Papa Legba, the great elocutioner, speaks all human languages and all the languages of the spirits. He is the divine translator. But he is also a trickster. He is fond of riddles and clever plays on words. And he is known, at times, to deliberately distort the messages that pass between humans and the Sluagh, not out of malice, but to teach lessons, to humble the arrogant, to force the devotee to listen more carefully for the wisdom concealed within the puzzle. To deepen the mystery, some practitioners insist that the popular idea of Legba at the crossroads is a confusion, a blending of Vodou with American hoodoo. They will tell you that the true dangerous master of the crossroads is another spirit entirely. Kalfu, Legba's dark twin, a spirit of the Petwu nation born of the rage of slavery. While Legba opens the gate for benevolent spirits, Kalfu stands at the same crossroads, but opens the path for the spirits of the night, for misfortune, for the malevolent Sluagh. He favours offerings of rum infused with gunpowder, a volatile libation for a volatile spirit. To approach the crossroads is to risk calling the wrong name, to seek help, and instead open a door to ruin. It suggests a spiritual landscape that is itself a crossroads, a place of confusing paths where the desperate seeker might find they have been knocking on the wrong door all along. There are spirits bound by the calendar and spirits bound to the land. But there is another kind of fear, the fear of a presence that is bound by nothing at all. The dread of an unseen audience, of a world that lies not across a threshold, but overlaid upon our own, thin as breath on glass. This is the fear of being watched, not just on one night, but always. Our journey takes us to the sun-drenched islands of French Polynesia. In 1892, the painter Paul Gauguin, fleeing what he saw as the corruption of Europe, created a work of art that is a masterpiece of psychological dread. It is called Manau Tupapau, which in the Tahitian language can mean either the spirit of the dead is watching, or she is thinking of the spirit of the dead. The painting depicts Gauguin's young Tahitian wife, Teha Amana, lying naked and face down on a bed, her eyes wide with terror. Behind her, a dark, cloaked figure sits in silent vigil. Gauguin claimed the painting was inspired by a real event. He returned to their hut late one night to find Teha Amana paralysed with fear, a fear she attributed to the Tupapau. In traditional Polynesian belief, the spirits of the dead normally travel on to another realm, but some become lost. Perhaps their funeral rites were wrong, or they were harmed by demons on the path. These souls remain on earth as ghosts, wandering the world of the living, their loneliness curdling into something malevolent. For the Tahitians, the night itself, the time they called Po, was the domain of the Tupapa'u. And they so feared these spirits that they would never venture out in the darkness without a light. The phosphorescent glows of fungi on dead trees were believed to be the spirits themselves, watching from the dark. But the painting, like the belief it depicts, is a puzzle. Is the Dark Watcher a real Tupapau? Or is it a projection of Te Ha'amana's own fear? Some art historians propose a far darker interpretation, that Te Ha'amana's terror was not of a spirit, but of the man painting her, the man who was her husband, Gauguin himself, the middle-aged, white, colonialist artist, returning to her bed in the night. In this reading, the Tupapa'u becomes a convenient cultural screen, a primitive superstition used by Gauguin to mask a very human horror. The spirit of the dead watching becomes a metaphor for the predatory gaze of the artist, and the fear in the young girl's eyes is not of a ghost, but of him. The line between the supernatural watcher and the human watcher dissolves, leaving us with a profound and disturbing uncertainty. From the Pacific, we travel to the vast, arid landscapes of the Arabian Peninsula and to a belief in a class of beings far more complex than simple ghosts. In the West, our idea of these beings has been shaped by children's tales of a genie in a bottle. This is a pale, hollow echo of the true and far more unnerving concept of the Jinn. According to Islamic tradition, God fashioned 3 races of intelligent beings with free will. He made angels from light, humanity from clay, and a 3rd race from a substance described as smokeless fire. These are the Jinn. The Jinn are not the spirits of the dead. They are a parallel species, an entire civilization that exists in a dimension unseen by human eyes, a realm known as Al-Ghaib, the unseen. This realm coexists with our own. They inhabit desolate places, ruins, deserts, graveyards, but also our own homes, living alongside us, invisible. They have societies, families, and rulers. They eat, sleep, marry, and die, though their lives are far longer than ours. And most importantly, like humans, they possess free will. They are not inherently good or evil. Each Jinn can choose its path. Some are pious and good. Others are unbelievers, mischievous, or actively malevolent. They are a hidden kingdom of potential threats. There are the powerful and arrogant Marid, the Jinn of the open seas and waters, the mischievous and fiery Ifrit, who are strong and cunning, the lowly Shayatin, who are aligned with darkness and whisper temptations, and the dreaded Ghoul, a desert-dwelling Jinn that lures travellers from the path to devour their flesh and drink their blood. The leader of the evil Jinn is Iblis, the figure known in the West as Satan, who was a Jinn, not a fallen angel, and whose pride led him to rebel against God. Herein lies the deep existential horror of the Jinn. We are not alone. We share our world with an invisible, powerful, and intelligent race whose motivations are their own and whose moral alignment is a matter of individual choice. They can be helpful, but they can also be the source of misfortune, of accidents, of illness, and even possession. The thin veil is not something that descends on a special night. It is a permanent condition of our reality. We are perpetually coexisting with neighbours we cannot see, and we can never be certain of their intentions. Some of the dead fade into memory, others watch from the periphery, but some refuse to go. They are animated by a furious gravity, a jealousy so profound it pulls their rotting flesh from the earth. They are not ghosts. They are a pestilence of the past made solid. And nowhere is this fear given more terrifying form than in the cold, dark folklore of the Norse peoples. Here, the undead are not intangible spirits. They are the Draugr. A Draugr is an animated corpse, but it is not the mindless zombie of our modern nightmares. The Draugr retains its intelligence, its memories, and its personality from life, and it is consumed by a poisonous cocktail of greed for the treasures buried with it, and a bitter, profound envy of the living. They are described in the sagas as hideous, their bodies swollen to the size of an ox, their skin a necrotizing black or a deathly bruised blue. What the Norse called Helblar, the colour of the underworld. They possess superhuman strength, long scratching claws, and a foul reek of decay emanates from their burial mounds. But their powers extend beyond the physical. A Draugr could shapeshift, sometimes into a great seal, a flayed bull, or a monstrous cat. They could pass through solid earth, and their very presence could cause disease, create unnatural fog, and bring a foul luck upon a village. And the horror is contagious. Those killed by a Draugr are often doomed to rise as one themselves, creating a terrifying epidemic of the undead. In the Grettis saga, the shepherd Glamour is killed by a monstrous presence and rises as a Draugr of immense power, terrorizing his entire valley, riding on the rafters of the longhouse at night until the timbers splinter. His shrieks driving all who hear them to madness. To defeat a Draugr was no simple matter. It required a brutal physical confrontation. A hero would have to enter the burial mound, wrestle the animated corpse, and subdue it. The only way to ensure it would not rise again was to cut off its head, place the head at the creature's buttocks, burn the body to ashes, and scatter those ashes in the sea. It was a final, violent act to put an end to a past that would not stay dead. And yet, in the very same culture that held this terror of the dead returning uninvited, there existed a powerful countercurrent, a desire to intentionally seek out the spirits, to cross the veil and bring back knowledge. While the common person feared the Draugr, the community also held in a mixture of reverence and fear another figure, the Vulva. The Vulva was a seeress, a prophetess, a female practitioner of a powerful and mysterious form of magic known as Seither. Seither was a shamanic art, a complex set of rituals concerned with discerning and even shaping fate. It was considered a woman's art. For a man to practice it was to invite accusations of being ergi, unmanly, though some did, including the greatest of the gods, Odin himself. The Vulva was a wanderer, a professional who would travel from town to town, offering her services in exchange for payment and lodging. When a community faced a crisis, a famine, a plague, a war, they would call upon a Vulva. The ritual of Seither was a dramatic affair. The seeress would sit upon a high platform, a Seid Jali, holding her ceremonial staff, a symbol of her power, assisted by a chorus of young women singing special songs called Vard Lokur, to attract the spirits. The Vulva would enter a deep trance, sometimes aided by hallucinogenic herbs like henbane. In this state, her spirit was believed to leave her body and journey into the other worlds, to communicate with ancestors, with land spirits, and even with the gods, to gain hidden knowledge about the past and the future. So great was the power of the Vulva that Odin himself is described in the poem Völuspá as raising the spirit of a long-dead Vulva from her grave to question her about the coming of Ragnarök, the twilight of the gods. This paradox, the simultaneous terror of the dead and the desire to communicate with them, is a timeless human impulse. Today, some might play with a Ouija board for a cheap thrill, But for a growing number of people, the old ways are being reborn. Modern pagan and heathen communities are actively reviving the traditions of Samhain. They build ancestor altars in their homes, decorated with photographs, heirlooms, and offerings of food and drink. They hold their own dumb suppers, sharing a silent meal with their beloved dead. They practice divination with tarot cards and runes, seeking guidance from the other side during this time when they believe the veil is thinnest. And the practice of Seir itself is undergoing a renaissance, as modern Viking seers attempt to reconstruct these ancient rituals of trance and spirit journeying. The human obsession with the boundary of death, the dual impulse to both bolt the door against it and to peek through the keyhole, is as powerful now as it ever was. And so we find ourselves back on the familiar street, under the orange glow of a porch light. The night air is filled with the laughter of children and the rustle of candy wrappers. It all seems so harmless now, so safe. But is it? After walking through the smoke of the bonfires, after listening for the grinding axle of the death cart, after waiting at the crossroads for the gate to open, after feeling the gaze of the watchers in the dark, after facing the ravenous dead and the ecstatic seers, can we ever see this night the same way again? We have travelled the globe and the centuries, searching for the meaning of this time when the veil between the worlds is said to be thin. We have looked for that veil in history, in folklore, in the elaborate rituals of our ancestors. But what if we have been looking in the wrong place? What if the veil that thins is not some mystical barrier between our world and another, but something far closer to home? What if the veil is the one that separates the conscious mind from the vast, dark, unmapped territory of the unconscious? What if the liminal space is not a time or a place, but a state of being, deep within ourselves? Consider what we have truly seen. The Ankou is not just a personification of death. He is the embodiment of our fear that the familiar can become the monstrous, that our own community can turn against us. Papa Legba is not just a spirit at a crossroads. He is the primal anxiety of being misunderstood, of our most desperate pleas being lost in translation at the most critical moment. The Tupapa'u and the Djinn are not just ghosts. They are the incarnation of our paranoia, the terror of being watched and judged by an unseen, unknowable power. And the Draugr is not just a reanimated corpse. It is the ravenous ghost of our own past, our own greed and envy, our own unresolved traumas, clawing their way back into the present to devour our future. These are not monsters that come from outside. They are exquisitely detailed maps of our own internal darkness. They are the names and the faces our ancestors gave to their deepest, most intractable fears. As the harvest ends, as the days shorten, as the cold comes, and the world outside begins its seasonal death, we are forced, whether we admit it or not, to confront the reality of our own mortality. And the rituals, the stories, the monsters, they're all part of a sophisticated and necessary psychological technology developed over thousands of years for doing just that, for taking the ghosts we all carry inside of us, and for a short time, externalizing them. That is the secret we have forgotten, the truth buried beneath a mountain of candy and commerce. Halloween, in its oldest and deepest sense, is not about the spirits of the dead coming to visit us. It is about the one time of year we give our own ghosts a face, put a mask on our own anxieties, and grant them permission to walk in the world outside ourselves. The veil is not out there. It is within. And on this one night, we grant ourselves the courage to look.